Hello, everybody. Welcome to the third episode now of the Preferred Walk-Ons show, a college football show about college football. Obviously, I'm Demetrius Zamaris. I got Jeremy Taché here with me. We covered the ACC last week, and this week, obviously, now we're moving on in alphabetical order to the Big Ten Conference, home of a lot of teams that a lot of people probably don't care about. They're the flyover states, as they say in politics, right? But they still matter in the grand scheme of things. There's a couple of teams here that have
Hashtag Big Ten teams matter.
yeah, Big Ten teams matter.
Okay.
It's the mashed potato and corn country, so we gotta put on our working man hats here and get into that Midwest mindset, right?
As you guys can tell, we are not the types to put on our working man hats
No,
because
refuse
Meech is
to work
wearing
hard.
an anime shirt with anime stuff in the background, and I have a WNBA Indiana Fever 20th anniversary commemorative hat on right now, which
Not only that, hey, that's Midwest though. That's Indiana Fever's up in the
why I
Midwest.
wore it, dude. Go Hoosiers.
I've been to Indianapolis before, so
This guy
I was
went
gonna
to
say I've never
guy
been
went
to
to
the
the combine.
Midwest, but I've definitely been to the Midwest before. Just once, but I've been there.
I'm really proud of you because I've been to Michigan once to watch UCF get annihilated. Hey, there's my UCF reference. All right, let's get moving.
1.5 minutes in. All right. Let's all right, so let's move
I
on.
can't even go a minute into the podcast without
That was trash.
I
You
can't.
should
I'm
you should
sorry. I
feel
didn't
bad
even
about
mean
that one.
to. Oh
All
God.
right, so obviously, if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe. We're going to be coming with more previews here in the next couple of weeks, and then when the season starts, obviously, we'll have the preview and review episodes. So you're going to be looking forward to all of that. Let's just jump right in here, Jeremy. Though with Illinois,
Let's do it.
it is Lovie Smith's, I want to say fourth season at Illinois, with each of them progressively being more forgettable than the last. Um, I don't know. Let's just start with the obvious question here: is can they make a bowl game? They were 4-8 last season, 2-7 in the Big Ten, finishing seventh place in their own conference in the Big Ten West. There,
I think the good news for them is that they don't play Ohio State.
yep, that's
and
always good.
and most of their toughest games are at home. Right? So you've got Nebraska, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Northwestern at home. Theoretically, with those really tough games that you want to just schedule as losses, theoretically, you might be able to steal one because you're at home. Do I anticipate it? No. I think the best thing about Illinois right now is Lovie Smith's beard, which, if you haven't seen it, guys, good God, what a beard that is.
Does he still have it?
Most recently that I saw, yeah, right when he came out for Big Ten Media Day, he had that beard rocking. So to me, that's the only thing I look forward to.
That's worth 4 wins in itself.
Yeah,
so.
that gets you to 4. So can you steal a couple of others?
There.
The reality is I don't know that I see it, right? Like they're going to start 2-0, probably 3-0.
If they're not 3-0, they got to really take a serious look in the mirror, right?
Exactly. So
Michigan is probably what's sad is UConn is on their opening 3 games there, but Eastern Michigan's probably their toughest game to open up the season.
Yeah, it definitely is. I mean, UConn's horrific.
Akron's not bad, but
they're not bad. But Illinois is going to beat Akron, so you start 3-0, and that feels good. And all you need is 3 more wins the rest of the way.
Yeah,
but
where I mean, Rutgers. They also have. I'm just going to say this now. Get this out of the way. Anybody that, in the Big Ten that has Rutgers on their schedule, that's a win.
Okay,
I don't think Rutgers is winning a conference game this year.
Okay, so now you're at 4 wins. So, like we talked about, can Illinois
steal Lovie Smith's beard? Yeah,
I don't necessarily. That's Lovie Smith's beard. Lovie Smith's beard. There's your 4 wins. But I don't think that they can steal 2 more games. Maybe they'll get 1. It's just where I started this, which was the argument of Illinois gets their toughest games at home. I almost feel like maybe that's a disadvantage because the games that you thought maybe they could steal over a team, like Minnesota or like Purdue, they got to go travel to those places. So,
and you would rather maybe have those games at home.
Yeah, ironically, the more I think about it, the more you're actually disadvantaged by playing your tougher teams at home.
Because even though they get Michigan at home and they get Wisconsin at home, how much of a difference does that truly make?
Right, exactly. So I think, again, they're probably going to hover around 4 or 5 wins.
I will say Bobby Roundtree is a beast at defensive end. He'll probably play in the NFL. The running back, Reggie Corbin, comes back. He's not awful by any means. He's actually, I would say, above average. Third team All Big Ten last year.
Mm-hmm.
Ricky Smalling's back at wide receiver, who's decent, and they played a true freshman 8 games last season at quarterback. He's back, so MJ Rivers is the second. I mean, let's just see what they can do. But yeah, I think 4 or 5 wins again this season is probably fine. But I mean, it's Illinois. It's like what we talked about with Boston College last week with the ACC is like, what exactly kind of program do they want to be? And, perennial bowl eligibility would be a huge step forward for Illinois than where they have been recently. So I think that's nothing to sneeze at.
Right, I tend to agree with you. And moving to the next team here in the Big Ten, it's another team that missed bowl eligibility last year that's just trying to get there. It's Indiana. What are your initial thoughts on Indiana, who every year does seem to like push Michigan or Ohio State or one of those teams to the brink? They don't upset them, but they push them.
They're the ultimate upset tease kind of team.
Yeah, they're one of those where it's like, you get the alert at the bottom of the ESPN bottom line. It's like upset alert, third quarter, Indiana leads Ohio State 21-17.
You're out tailgating for like a UCF game one weekend and you look at your phone. It's like, hey, I don't know if anyone else is seeing this, but Indiana's up 27 points on Ohio State in the third quarter.
Yeah.
And then sure enough, Ohio State ends up winning 56-27 or something.
Well, isn't that was that the game last year? Was that the game the day of the was it the Cincinnati game? It was
something wild, yeah.
Something like that. Was that Indiana? Or was
it over the last
with Dwayne Haskins?
It might have been
that year. It might have been the Haskins year that they came back.
Yeah, that was last year.
Right, last year. Right.
Yeah.
Nonetheless, not that any of that really matters. We're just going on a ramble spree here. But Indiana, I mean, they're another team that it's like, what can we really expect from them?
I think they'll be bowl eligible this year, though. I think that's one step in there because Peyton Ramsey, is like legitimately good quarterback, and so they have him back. I actually really like him. He's not he'll probably won't win like first team all conference Big Ten or anything, but he's one of the better quarterbacks in the conference. Stevie Scott is back at running back. And they have their best receiver back too with Donovan Hale. So there's pieces on offense, and the defense has improved since they changed coaches. I think 2 years ago. So Tom Allen's not doing a terrible job since taking over. I think they dismissed their old head coach because he had that he was treating players pretty poorly, which seems like a theme we see here in the Big Ten for some reason. Yeah. So, if they jumped into the 7-9 win range, it wouldn't shock me because I think there's a lot of talent here. Even on defense, they're bringing a lot of guys back. Marcelinho Ball, which is like an awesome name at linebacker, he's back. Andre Brown Jr. is a seriously good corner. So, there's a lot of talent here. It's just, can they pick the right spots, get the wins where they need them, and, I think they could make a bowl, maybe stretch it to 7 or 8 wins with a bowl win. So I actually like this team.
Yeah, I don't dislike Indiana. I think that all the things that you just mentioned describe a bowl team, right? Everything you just mentioned describes at least a bowl-eligible team. And when you do look at the schedule, there's some built-in wins here, right? Ball State, Eastern Illinois, UConn.
The Ball State game is strangely on a neutral site, which I thought was strange, but
it is weird that that's happening. But it's still theoretically, if Indiana's as good as we think they are, they're going to beat Ball State at that neutral site game. So I just named 4 games that are penciled in as wins, right? They got a Lovie Smith Spirit also. The games from there that if they're going to get to bowl eligibility and beyond, can they go to Michigan State at Michigan State? They probably could go into Maryland and beat Maryland. Can they beat Northwestern at home? Like those are at Purdue.
You got to look at those like mid-tier teams.
Right. The other mid-tier teams. And it's like we've described in these first few episodes. Every conference has their 3 or 4 teams at the top for the most part. The SEC is the only team that runs crazy deep, or the only conference that runs crazy deep. Other than that, every conference has, for the most part, 3 or 4 teams at the top.
And the Pac-12 is going to get weird when we get to that. The Pac-12
it's just a strange conference. Well, and for that matter, the ACC has 1 team, and then everybody else is basically the same level besides the very bottom. But Indiana's another one of those mid-tier teams where if they're going to get to bowl eligibility and beyond and get maybe to 8 wins, they're going to have to beat those other mid-tier teams, and they might have to go on the road to do it. I actually do think they can this year. I'm kind of high on Indiana for all the reasons that you mentioned in terms of their stability, especially on the offensive side.
Yeah, they bring back a good combination on both sides of the ball, but Also, another team bringing back a lot of guys that, had a little bit more success last year and has perennially been in that conversation for, they're going to make the Big Ten championship game in the West. And it's Iowa, right?
I don't
Kirk Ferentz
understand
is
Iowa.
like,
I don't. Sorry, not to interrupt. I don't understand how they're what they are.
Kirk Ferentz is a walking 8-win coach.
It's
That's just
amazing.
what it boils it down to.
Yeah, it's incredible. I mean, his coaching job.
That's the thing. Like, if you're one of these teams in the Big Ten, right? Isn't Iowa like the pinnacle of what you want to be?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Where you have a team like Iowa that is, for no reason, there's no reason that Iowa should be much better than Indiana, like we just mentioned, or Illinois, like we just mentioned. There's no reason for Iowa to be that, but they have a coach that's stable, and he has a system, and they put it into place, and every single year they're going to pull off an upset or two, and every single year they're going to be an 8-9 win team.
And they're going to be in contention to play in the Big Ten championship game, which in turn gets you into the Rose Bowl, right? So that's the thing. And, if you're going to a Rose Bowl once every 5 years as a Big Ten program and you're not Ohio State or Michigan, you got to, love that sort of thing. So somehow they lost 2 tight ends in the first round of the NFL draft, which is just absolutely insane. And so obviously we're talking about Hawkinson and Fant there, but Nate Stanley's back at QB, and he's the most Iowa explosive quarterback they've had in a long time.
Yeah.
So he's back. They got both of their leading rushers back, and this is a team that loves to run the football and just play nasty defense. Mm-hmm. And I don't see any indication of why you would think that they're not going to do that again this year. And, plug and play, there's 8 to 9 wins, maybe 10, and they're right in the mix to win the Big Ten West again this season.
Yeah, I think the thing that's interesting about Iowa is when you do check out their schedule, right? Those first 4 games are wins, okay?
Right.
After that, when they're at Michigan, if they can go into Michigan and win, then you've really got something cooking.
Right, yeah.
They don't have to play Ohio State this year.
Nope.
And when you only have to play Michigan and you pull off the upset, now you're 5-0.
And then they get Nebraska at the end of the season.
Right. And now your expectations are really through the roof. Now you can really start talking. Now, they lose to Michigan, it's not like their season's over by any means.
Not at all.
Not at all.
Right.
But if they can get there, all of a sudden they're jumping into probably the top 15, right, in the rankings, and they're looking at one of those types of seasons that could lead to college football playoff talk. I don't think that it happens. I think that Michigan will beat Iowa. I don't think they're going into Michigan. I don't think that they're that level of team. But it's going to be a really fun first 5 weeks for that fan base, because what you're looking at is a team that has moderate expectations that could jump to astronomical expectations.
And they're a team, I wouldn't be surprised if they beat anybody on their schedule.
No, not at all.
They're just a solid football team. I mean, they lost a lot on defense, in terms of upper end talent with Amani Hooker's gone, Anthony Nelson's gone, Jake Gervais is gone, but AJ Espinosa is a beast at defensive end. So, I wouldn't put it past them if they beat Michigan. I think the problem is the attrition of going on the road, where their hardest games are all on the road. Michigan's on the road, Northwestern's on the road,
right.
Wisconsin's on the road, and then they end the season on the road at Nebraska. But like we said, 8 to 9 wins, possibly Big Ten West championship. I wouldn't be surprised.
Well, and just last thing on Iowa, it's the irony of what we talked about with Illinois off the top of, for them, it would have been better to go on the road and play the tough teams. For a team like Iowa that you expect to beat the mid-tier team.
You almost want to flip-flop the schedules.
Right. Yeah. You wish that, if they each had each other's schedule, they'd be better off. Right? Because Illinois would lose the game they're supposed to lose and then maybe have a shot to win at home against the mid-tier teams. Iowa gets to beat up on those mid-tier teams at home, but has to go on the road and play their toughest games of the season. So it's kind of a shame for both teams that that's how it worked out. Luckily, that means next year, both of those are flipped for the most part.
Right.
So, as you're looking at optimism for the future for either program, you can look and know that this year is really a tougher version of your schedule than what it will be the following season. And so if we move on now from Iowa.
Well, this is a team that's not going to have much of a emotionally tougher season than they did last year with Maryland.
That's true. Yeah.
And, just still come out last year after, losing a teammate, all the, frankly, bullshit that happened with the coaching staff and how the university handled everything, right? I'm also looking at UCF and Notre Dame and how you treat players and, people dying, literally dying.
Literally dying.
so I'm not gonna stand on my soapbox any longer about that. But for those players to come out and still get 5 wins, they still beat Texas last year.
It was crazy.
They put up fights against almost everybody they played, like 5-7, 3-6 in the Big Ten. This is a team where, I'm not sure what Maryland is going to be, but I know that they have legitimately like tough-spirited dudes on that team, and they're not going to fall below a 5-win threshold. But 5 to 7 wins feels about their ceiling.
Yeah, I guess the biggest issue with Maryland is how do they get to bowl eligibility?
Right.
Because when again,
their out-of-conference schedule does not help. They have a tough out-of-conference schedule.
Right. Well, that's what I was about to get into, and I hate one thing I don't like about season previews from a lot of other people that now I'm sort of falling into is just looking at the schedule and going,
right.
Oh, well, how do they get there? But in a conference like this and with some of the teams that are here, we didn't do a lot of that in the AAC. We did it more based off of tiers. We did the same thing in the ACC. In the Big Ten, a lot of this is dependent on schedule. A lot of it is there are real legitimate home field advantages in this conference that don't necessarily there's passion, that don't necessarily.
And I think we'll really get to that when we talk about Wisconsin. Wisconsin schedule is super weird like that. So
absolutely. And so when you do look at Maryland, having to play Syracuse isn't so easy. Syracuse is a really good team. We talked about them last week.
Temple too.
Having to travel to Temple.
Temple's going to be.
Right. We have no idea.
Howard isn't Howard where Cam Newton's younger brother is, and they had the biggest upset in history last year.
Oh man,
I think that's Howard. I could, and if I'm wrong, I'm sorry, but Kasim Hill is gone. He transferred, but Tyrell Pigram is pretty solid at quarterback. He's not the most advanced passer of the football by any means, but on the ground, he's dynamic. Remember what he did to Texas 2 years ago to open the season? It was just insane.
Right.
And Anthony McFarland Jr. at running back is awesome. Like, what he had, I think, like 3 different 70-yard runs against Ohio State last year.
Yeah,
so he's the game break. He kind of reminds me in a way of Darrell Henderson from Memphis last year, where he's just like he's an explosive play waiting to happen, right?
Right.
At 8 yards of carry last year, only 4 touchdowns, which was a little bit surprising to me. But he feels like a guy with all conference type talent. So, you lean on the running game a little bit in Mike Locksley's first year as the head coach. The defense lost a lot. I mean, Trey Watson was probably their best defensive player. And then they also lost Darnell Savage Jr., who went in the first round of the Packers.
Right.
So, there's a talent kind of exodus on defense. And you're right. It's tough to see where these wins come from, but I wouldn't be surprised if they were a bowl eligible team. But
I would say the goal should be bowl eligibility. I personally don't really think they're going to reach it because I think they'll at the best split between Temple and Syracuse. I don't think they're winning both of those games, and so that certainly doesn't help your cause when you're out of conference schedule against a couple of teams that are not necessarily powerhouses, but
they're still good teams.
But they're still good teams, and I'm not totally confident that you're going to go get those couple of wins. And when you are a mid to really lower tier team in the Big Ten, you're not really in a position to lose those out of conference games early and feel like then you can get to a bowl game. So 5-7 again sort of feels reasonable. And like you said, it's mostly because of that exodus of talent on the defensive side of the ball. The offense might still be fine. I just don't know how they're going to really be able to hold on to games, even if.
And with any team, getting a first-year head coach in, you never know what's going to happen. It was huge for Mike Locksley to keep McFarland Jr. and Pigram in the program because they were both talking about transferring. So, it could be like the outlook could have been much, much worse. So, you just got to be happy with what you get at this point and move on from everything that happened last season. Just continue to separate yourself from the DJ Durkin era.
Yeah, absolutely. And so now we get to really get talking about the big boys, right? We're on to Michigan.
I just don't know what to make of Michigan, right? Will they ever get over the Ohio State hump? Because if they are, it's
this year. If it's ever a year, it's this year, right? It has to be.
The defense lost an absolute buttload of talent, and they were that's what carried their team last year, right? And this year, it feels like the offense is set up to almost do the reverse. They have Shea Patterson. You have a senior quarterback, right?
Right.
who was a 5-star recruit, the best dual threat quarterback coming out in his class.
So
when he was
weird.
at Ole Miss, everyone was talking about, if he got – because when he was able to transfer and there was not going to be any penalty for him having to wait and sit, it was like, oh, whoever gets Shea Patterson, that's a huge upgrade. And last year he was fine.
I don't even know if I would go with fine. Shea Patterson was not good last year.
But so here's my thing though: is it his fault, or is it this continuing trend that we see with this Michigan coaching staff and Jim Harbaugh especially, where there's just no explosion or creativity in the offense, right?
I know it's exhausting.
There's no excuse this year. You have 3 receivers who are 6'5" or taller, who are absolute or 6'2" or taller, and they're all absolute studs, right? Tarek Black, Nico Collins, Donovan Peoples-Jones, who's probably the best of the 3.
Donovan Peoples-Jones is so good.
That's like a basketball team playing wide receiver for you, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
they have speed. It's not like they're just big dudes. They're not Kelvin Benjamin.
And I'll admit, they haven't all lived up to their potential yet. But again, who does that fall back on?
Isn't that the coach's job? That's the thing that I always laugh at with universities like Michigan. And I'm not singling out Michigan by any means, but there's a bunch of schools. No, but I don't mean. What I mean by this is this is sort of an overarching conversation when it comes to really the 3 biggest culprits over the span of years have been Michigan, Notre Dame, and USC, right? Those are the 3 schools that we
Texas too, to a certain extent.
No, you're actually right. Let me throw Texas in there. Texas is another big one of them over the last decade.
When you have all these resources and you just Michigan is so close, right?
And you can't get over the hump
because Ohio State is just at that next level because open up the playbook. Let Shea Patterson be Shea Patterson.
That's the thing that I was going to get to, which is the conservatism and I guess the frustration that I have with those schools is you have all of these guys with this massive potential, and when they
and the resources to develop them.
Well, right, but when they underperform, you're blaming the 18 to 21-year-old kid for not getting the most younger, or you're going to blame the coaches for not getting the most out of their ability. When you're looking at other universities, when you're looking at other programs in your own conference or outside of your conference, when you look at the Boise States of the world that exist.
Well, what's so weird is on that same token is look at how Jim Harbaugh managed at Stanford. He got the most out of those guys. Why can't he do the same?
That's what doesn't make any sense to me. That's what doesn't make any sense to me is how you can go from being a coach at Stanford.
I mean, obviously, Shea Patterson's not Andrew Luck, but
no, but get the most out of your players. Even before Andrew Luck, they were fine. Even after, I don't really understand how Jim Harbaugh has gotten to this point of being this really great coach that we all trust is a great coach that has recruited outstanding players year after year that are going on to the NFL, and yet every year is a disappointment. Every single year
can't beat Ohio State, dude. That's what I mean, and
that's what it comes down to. I don't even want to say anything else about the season, to be honest.
As simple as it is, it just boils down to can you beat Ohio State for once? Win the Big Ten East, get to a Big Ten championship game, beat Ohio State.
Right.
And losing Devin Bush on defense hurts, but Don Brown is a genius defensive coordinator, right? So he'll figure out a way. Their secondary was the best secondary in the country last year, and they bring back 2 guys, Lavert Hill, first team all conference. They bring back safety, Josh Metellus, right? Mm-hmm. So the secondary is still going to be awesome, but the secondary got torched by Ohio State.
Right. Well, and they have – what's interesting is then going ahead and looking at their schedule, right?
They should beat everybody on their schedule before they get to Ohio State. It's not
literally everyone.
It's not like a 100% thing, but they should. They are the more talented team in every game they play this season.
And not only are they the more talented team, but they get Wisconsin early. Wisconsin has a new quarterback, getting Wisconsin early. And in years past, the excuses from the Michigan people.
They have Notre Dame, Michigan State, and Ohio State all at home.
Well, that's what I'm saying. So
all at home.
Right.
With a senior quarterback.
And not only that, they're not all in a row. So the excuses in years past from all of these Michigan people has always been, well, look, at the end of the season, we had to go to Wisconsin and then play Ohio State, or we had to go to Notre Dame and then play Ohio State. They don't have any of that this year.
That's a song on the world's smallest violin.
Exactly. Goodness. I mean, that's the thing that has bothered me the most is the excuse making for well, look at what our schedule looked like. Dude, there are teams that overachieve in
tell that to
every
Auburn.
conference. Right. That's exactly where I was about to go. Tell that to a team like Auburn. Tell that to a team like LSU. Tell that to all of these different teams in the SEC that have to go through powerhouses week after week after week and get to the championship game just to play Alabama.
Right.
And get an eye, or not even get to play Alabama. Play a team that just upset Alabama. Like, don't give me that excuse. Go
talk to West Virginia these last couple years.
Exactly. Go beat the teams in front of you. And this is the year to do it because your schedule, there's no excuses with this schedule. You get
win the games you're supposed to win, and at home, step up in front of 100,000 plus fans and with a senior quarterback. I know I keep going back. Shea Patterson is a senior quarterback with a lot of talent. Win the games. Jim Harbaugh has been awful in big games since he got back to Michigan.
I wholeheartedly agree with you. But so that being said, you're doing a preview for a reason. You anticipate undefeated season up until Ohio State, as
hopefully.
All right, but that's the anticipation, right? I think we would both theoretically when we're previewing this game, when we're previewing this team, based off the paper, based off of what we can describe, we're looking at a team that is undefeated until they play Ohio State. It's pretty much as simple as that. I always anticipate that Michigan's defense is going to be good enough, even when they've lost all this talent. So, do you think they can get over Ohio State this year? I know we'll get to Ohio State in a bit, but do you think Michigan has what it takes this year, or is it just simply you're saying?
Think about it, dude. We have so many questions about Ohio State, right? And we'll talk about it when we get there. They should. They absolutely should.
I agree with you.
And the thing is, though, let's move on to the next team.
Right.
Michigan State is a team that always beats Michigan in big games when they're on the road.
Always.
Especially these last couple of seasons, right?
Yeah.
And I know, like, obviously the punt block miracle that happened a few years ago, like, that was a miracle, right? But it still happened. We can't just erase that from our memory. And Michigan State's a team that should be much better this year too. They have another senior QB as well, Brian Lewerke, who last year for some reason was getting first round NFL buzz, and he sucked last year, but he's back. Is that a good thing? It should be. D'Antonio has always done good when he has a senior quarterback.
Mm-hmm. No, that's true. That's true. And the big thing with Michigan State has always been having a senior quarterback, right? Like, they're always at their best when they have one of those dudes who they can trust to just come in and do the job and gets how D'Antonio works.
Right, and they lost a lot on defense too, but they're a team that I just expect their defense to be a top 15 defense. I just expected it.
I definitely don't think that Michigan State will be 7-6 again this year. I absolutely anticipate them being much better than last season.
I think they could win 10 games on this schedule. This is not a tough schedule.
Mm-hmm.
Not a tough schedule at all.
I don't see a reason why they wouldn't win 10 games. Look, at Ohio State and at Wisconsin back-to-back weeks, that's not easy, right? Because Wisconsin's a really tough place to play. Regardless of if you're a better team or not, it's still a tough place to play. Right. I'm not saying that they are a better team. I'm just saying, like, even if they are the better team, they might not be on that given day. Having a senior quarterback helps, who's been there before. This schedule is a 9 or 10 win schedule, for sure.
The problem is, so the defense loses a lot, right? And the offense doesn't, but the offense was putrid last season.
Right.
They scored 19 points per game last season.
I guess just the thought would be that with a senior quarterback that does have that trust, that for that matter, everyone thought had NFL talent.
But this is the thing, though. We didn't see it translate to anything last season.
No.
They lost Felton Davis, who is their most explosive playmaker on offense, and they lost L.J. Scott, who, if anyone was close to Felton Davis in terms of explosion, he was the next guy, even though he had been at Michigan State for what felt like 45 seasons.
Right.
But he's gone now too. So who's going to step up and make plays on offense? And can Brian Lewerke finally kind of put what NFL evaluators see as all of this talent together? And I mean, if your offense finishes 120th or lower in S&P Plus or offensive efficiency, how are you a first round NFL quarterback? Like,
I agree with you.
Put it on paper, show what you can do. And I mean, he's got a good schedule. Like, there's a lot of games up front. I mean, other than Northwestern on the road, that's a tough defense they're going to be playing against. But there's enough there to build his confidence and start getting the offense rolling before they start really having to play the big boys.
I don't see them. I still don't see them finishing higher than third in their side of the conference.
Just their side of the conference.
But that's just an unfortunate turn of events there with with Ohio State. And
There's a weird mash of those teams that are upper tier teams in the Big Ten where that they have a lot of questions. It's Michigan State, Penn State this year has a lot of questions.
Yeah, a ton of
Wisconsin,
questions.
I have a lot of questions about. And so that's the thing, right? Is how do those teams kind of settle?
Right. Well, and the funny thing with those teams is that like Michigan State unfortunately has to be on the same side as Ohio State and Michigan, right? And
right.
So they, regardless of if they sort of overachieve or not based off of those questions, overachieving is still probably not going to lead to being in a Big Ten championship.
Right.
But moving to another one of those middle tier teams, kind of below Michigan State, and I guess you could say this is a program slightly on the upswing.
They're interesting for sure.
It's Minnesota,
right?
And
the quarterback competition is interesting, right? Like Zach Annexstad took the job as a true freshman last year.
Mm-hmm.
They started off 3-0, but then he got hurt.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, well, no, they started off 3-0, and then they lost 4 straight, and then he got hurt.
Right. Well,
and
so
then
then
then Tanner Morgan comes in, and he went 4-2 as a starter. So it becomes this question of they're both young guys. Annexstad's a true sophomore, and Morgan is a redshirt sophomore. So either way you go, that's a young guy playing quarterback, right?
Right.
PJ Fleck is a interesting coach, right? I don't know how else. He's a very unique character in college football, and you have him, rowing the boat. So losing Blake Cashman on defense though is huge because he was everywhere. Like if you watched a Minnesota game, you would come away saying, I don't know who Blake Cashman is.
But
animal
he's everywhere.
He made it, like I swear every Minnesota game I watched, I was like, dude, Blake Cashman is all over the field.
Yeah. What's going to be really interesting is, and this is something that you pointed out in sort of our pre-show notes, they get to avoid playing Michigan State, and Ohio State in the regular season.
It's an awesome schedule.
It's an incredible. So not only that, but then Nebraska, Penn State, and Wisconsin are all at home.
Yeah.
I mean,
this is a team that could legitimately make a run to win the Big Ten West. They could.
Strictly because they're fortunate enough to not have to deal with most of the studs at the other side of the conference. And so,
and there's so many questions in the Big Ten West, like we've already talked about, right?
Well, and while I started with the on Minnesota, even though
that's just because it's Minnesota,
right? There's no reason that they couldn't make a run here because, again, just look at what that schedule looks like, man. Forget the out-of-conference games. It's irrelevant to me. Look at their conference schedule and tell me that you think it's impossible that they run the table there. It's not.
It really depends on how you feel about teams like Nebraska and Purdue, right? Like, what do you think those teams that everybody feels is going to take a jump?
Right.
Because I feel like Minnesota's a team in that same kind of conversation is which of these teams that we all believe in, they all have these young, exciting heads. And I think that, Minnesota has more pieces in place than I would say, maybe not Nebraska, but more pieces in place than Purdue does for sure. And with what Penn State's lost, I really don't know what to make of Penn State this year. So
Minnesota's probably not the most interesting team in the conference, but if you're looking for one of those middle tier teams that's not getting a lot of love,
they're a fun like college football Twitter team, like where
they're totally it's like an inside, like if you're a real college football fan, Minnesota's a team to keep an eye on. Maybe throw a couple bucks down on, for competitive purposes.
Yeah, who knows?
Yeah. But all right, so now this is the time. This is where we're going to get into.
Yeah, I think there's going to be some disagreements here, right?
The Nebraska Cornhuskers, led by the one and only Scott Frost.
I still love you, Scott. I don't care what any UCF fan says.
Dude,
you're
I miss him so much. What UCF fan doesn't love and miss Scott Frost? Like,
there's a lot of fans that are still.
If you're a UCF fan, let me say this right now. Because this is not a UCF reference specifically. It is, but it's about most of those level of coaches and programs. This was his dream job.
Literally his dream job, right?
If Scott Frost left for Florida, I'd be cursing
then
him
we
into
could be
oblivion.
mad. Then I could be mad. Yeah, for sure.
It's a separate conversation. Even if he left for like Ohio State, I would have been mad.
Right.
Scott Frost left for his dream job.
And where he grew up, where he played, his parents still live there. Like, I'm not mad at him at all.
He is Bay. Scott Frost is Bay. Period.
Yeah, I'm not ashamed to say it.
He's Bay. If a UCF fan doesn't like Scott Frost, they're not a real UCF fan. All right, there, I said it. All right.
So mad with that one.
All right, so Nebraska though. I am very
the most gassed up 4-8 team of all time
in the history of college football, and it's strictly because
I've never seen a 4-8 team get this much hype heading into a season.
And I'm totally on the hype train with them. Well, because what it is
tell me why.
I'll tell you why.
It's Adrian Martinez, isn't it?
Adrian Martinez is so good. Adrian Martinez,
he's a beast.
Is so good. And college football.
And can I say one thing?
Yeah.
Adrian Martinez is a stud, but he had the injuries last year. And the problem with Nebraska last year is their backup quarterback was a walk-on, right? Mm-hmm. They don't have that problem this year. Nathan Vedral from UCF is now Noah. I'm sorry. Noah.
You're good.
But he's eligible this year. So even if Martinez gets hurt, you have a guy who's been in the system for, 4 years now?
Yeah, wild, man.
So, I mean, that's just a better situation off rip. And I hope Adrian Martinez doesn't get hurt because he's an absolute – like, you could see it last year.
He's a stud.
He's the perfect quarterback for the system, too.
And so here's the thing that hurts so deep is Adrian Martinez, I think, is at the very least going to be a Heisman finalist. And
this year
right now, this season,
spicy.
This season,
like it.
He's going to be a Heisman finalist, and I think there's a legitimate shot he wins a Heisman because if Nebraska,
if he wins the Heisman, I'll take you out to lunch. There's no chance.
If Nebraska goes ahead and wins their side of the conference, if Nebraska goes ahead and wins the Big Ten West,
yeah, I'm looking at the schedule here.
Okay, if Nebraska wins the Big Ten West and then pulls off the upset of whoever they get in the Big Ten championship, Adrian Martinez wins the Heisman Trophy. Because what that would mean is that this guy played at an unbelievable rate. And I have no reason to think that he won't. Right? So, like, given
go ahead.
Given what you just said about his ridiculous ability, what we saw from him last season. I mean, we saw flashes of brilliance right off the bat. And all I can do is go based off of what I've seen from Scott Frost.
I mean, he had almost 2,000, 1,000 in 11 games. Like 10 and a half, really. Yeah.
Right. It's insanity. And what he was able to do in his first year in the system as a literal true freshman with no backup quarterback, with a bunch of guys he was playing with that really weren't even like the dudes that were recruited for Frost's system.
Right.
We saw the jump. We've seen the jump that Scott Frost makes in the second year.
The second year jump, yeah.
As a head coach, right? He gets his guys in there. They're young, and it works for him. Obviously a different situation. I'm not predicting necessarily that Nebraska goes undefeated. I'm not doing that, although I should, because theoretically 100% of the time that Scott Frost is in the second year as a head coach of the program, they go undefeated. These are just facts.
And they win a national championship.
These are just facts. So Nebraska, I have ridiculous expectations for because I know that coaching staff. And it's not just Scott Frost, mind you. It's the whole same coaching staff that did it at UCF in that second year. Now they're going to have 2 recruiting classes worth of players and their stud quarterback who in his freshman year looked a hell of a lot better than Mackenzie Milton looked in his freshman year.
Oh, without question.
I can only imagine the type of jump that this kid is going to take at the college football level. I'm not saying Adrian Martinez is necessarily like a superstar pro prospect. I mean, ultimately,
no, he's a legitimate stud college football player.
Stud college football player. And I really, truly anticipate Nebraska winning the Big Ten West and Adrian Martinez being a Heisman Trophy candidate.
So I just have a few thoughts. Best thing for them. Ohio State, Wisconsin, and Iowa all have to come to Nebraska.
And Northwestern for that matter.
Right. And so that's huge. So those are the 4 biggest games of their season. They get to play them all at home, which we've said. And that's a place
maniacs.
That's a place where home field advantage actually exists, right?
Yeah.
Not only that, Carlos Davis, their best defensive player, is back playing defensive end. But, they lost their leading wide receiver and leading running back. They have running back questions considering what happened with that kid legal situation. I don't want to get into all of that, but J.D. Spielman is nice at wide receiver, and you just have to hope that Martinez is so good that he lifts the offense up with him. But I could see the pieces there. I just don't buy the national championship kind of. I know you don't either, but I've seen that, and I just have to see it first because they did only win 4 games last season.
Nebraska's I know I'm pushing the hype train as much as anybody right now. Nebraska's an unbelievably great season would be winning the Big Ten West.
Getting to 8 wins would be perfect. Would be awesome.
Right, but me floating out there the idea that they could win the Big Ten West, that's what the expectations that you put on yourself. That's the goal.
I mean, that's what got. Isn't that what got who was their head coach before, the crazy guy, Bo Pelini? That's what got Bo Pelini fired, is he was winning 8 games every year.
So
if Scott Frost wants to get that staying power, you got to start winning 9 to 10 to 11 and really start competing.
Right, and I don't see a reason why Nebraska shouldn't at least compete for their side of the conference. Okay,
right.
I'm not saying they're going to go in and beat Ohio State. I'm not saying Adrian Martinez is going to be the Heisman, but I'm saying that
you see the path for it.
Oh, I see the path for winning their side of the conference, and then all it takes is an outrageous performance by a Heisman Trophy candidate, and all of a sudden you are in the college football playoff. I mean, that's the thing.
Wow.
They're not going to get there. I don't anticipate them getting there. My prediction would be that they do win their side of the conference, and then they'll lose to Michigan or Ohio State in the conference championship game, and they'll go to a really nice bowl game, probably the Rose Bowl. Okay? But I don't see all of it happening. But would I be totally shocked if Nebraska lost 1 game during the regular season and won the Big Ten? It wouldn't be the craziest thing that's ever happened, is all I'm trying to say. Because the path is there with dynamic head coach, dynamic quarterback in a conference that there's totally a path to win your side of. And then all you got to do is win 1 game.
All right, let's move on to the next team who actually won the Big Ten West last year, right?
Right.
With Northwestern, who went 9-5 last season and 8-1 in conference. So they dominated when they played in the Big Ten, but outside the conference, not so much. Stanford at the start of the year in the Nerd Bowl, that'll be interesting because both teams kind of have.
Yeah.
You could see the outline for both teams being pretty competitive and relevant in a national sense, right? But it's, Northwestern has how much different is Hunter Johnson, the Clemson transfer?
Yeah.
To make this offense look, because Clayton Thorson is probably the best Northwestern quarterback in history, and they still finished 94th in offensive S&P Plus last year.
Right.
Hunter Johnson's legit, super talented. He was a 5-star recruit, right? And if not for Trevor Lawrence existing, he might be the starting quarterback at Clemson.
Right.
So that's not a bad or shameful position to be in, right? He just went to the next school where he could have his opportunity to play. If he can do what people think he can do, they could very well repeat as Big Ten West champions at least. Patty Fisher's back on defense, right? Man in the middle of the field, and Pat Fitzgerald loves having guys like that. Isaiah Bowser, who was a true freshman last year, was awesome at running back. Not as explosive as you would hope, but solid. And when you're a team that likes to run the ball and play good defense, having that solid option and a quarterback that could possibly make a difference, this is a team that is right back in the mix. In all honesty, I like them more than I like Wisconsin personally.
I personally think that Northwestern, if you're in a situation where someone asked you who's going to win the Big Ten West, the safest bet to me is Northwestern, because
over Iowa.
Yeah. Because I think Iowa's ceiling is very specific. Iowa, they pull off an upset or 2 here or there, but then they lose a couple of games that they're not supposed to. They're a very specific type of team. There's not a tremendous amount of upside.
Yeah.
Purdue, I have too many questions. Wisconsin, obviously a lot of questions. Nebraska's very boom or bust. Nebraska, obviously I just hyped them up a ton, and my prediction.
Don't forget about Minnesota, who we also said is
we also said has an interesting schedule.
The Big Ten West is just infinitely more interesting than the Big Ten East.
Exactly. It's just the more interesting side.
So you can see there's a path for all of these teams.
Every team besides Illinois could win the Big Ten West.
Sorry, Illinois.
You have Lovie Smith's beard, and that's all.
And you have Chicago-style pizza. That's a win.
Congratulations, guys. But Northwestern also has Chicago-style pizza and a chance to win the Big Ten West. But but it really is. I think they're the safest bet because they, like you mentioned, they bring back enough, and now they bring in a quarterback that, even though they just came off their greatest quarterback in school history, I kind of think that there's a good.
The ceiling's higher. I think it's an
Hunter
argument.
Johnson could be better, right? And so there's a lot of upside there. Do I think that they're going to win it for sure? No, I just told you that it's Nebraska. So I'd be talking out of both sides of my mouth if I said Northwestern was going to win it. But I also don't see a reason why Northwestern can't get to 10 wins.
Yeah.
Easily.
So let's move on. This is probably like the most interesting team or like most relevant national.
Always
team.
Relevant.
Ohio State, right? And Ohio State, I put in that group with like Alabama, Georgia, and Clemson, and just their recruiting and their resources are just on a different level than everybody else. Even like Texas and USC have kind of fallen behind in terms of recruiting, right?
Right.
And so they're one of those 4 teams, and Oklahoma I'll put in that group as well.
It's 5 teams total.
Right. And so you lose Dwayne Haskins after one season where he throws 51 touchdowns. Incredible season for a first-year starter. And you replace him with possibly the most talented quarterback recruit of all time. Like this guy, Justin Fields, was in the conversation with Trevor Lawrence as number 1 player in their class, best quarterback prospect, like best 2 quarterback prospects in the same class we've ever seen.
Ever.
And the kid's a freak, right? Like, and Georgia, for whatever reason, like Jake Fromm is awesome, right? For whatever reason, whenever Justin Fields was on the field for Georgia, it was run the ball.
Yeah.
They didn't use him to his true potential, right?
Yeah.
And so now he's with a coach in Ryan Day who got the most out of Dwayne Haskins, built the perfect offense around him.
Yeah.
He's got J.K. Dobbins back at wide receiver. He's got at running back. He's got KJ Hill back at wide receiver. The problem is they lose Mike Weber, who was second leading rusher on the team. And then they lose 3 of their top 4 receivers with Paris Campbell, second-round pick, Terry McLaurin, who was I want to say a 4th or 5th-round pick, and a lot of people said he could have been a second-round pick. And Johnny Dixon's gone as well at wide receiver. So that attrition, it becomes how quickly can Ryan Day rebuild the offense? But I believe so much in Justin Fields' talent that I don't think it really matters how – because it's Ohio State. The guys that they put in are going to be talented.
Well, that's what I was just about to say. Yeah. It's like you just talked about all these guys that they had and they lost, but Michael Thomas was there a few years ago, and they replaced him pretty easily. And who was the other kid that ended up, I think, with the Jets? Was it the kid that ended up with the Jets?
I know who you're talking about.
You know what I'm talking about? The fast guy that's turned into nothing. But either way, like every year, like you just mentioned, every year they've got 5-star after 5-star after 5-star at every single position. The only reason that this team would drop off is strictly because Ryan Day is not Urban Meyer.
Right.
I don't know if he is. Maybe he is. Maybe Urban Meyer
Urban Meyer might have built the program up so much too. Like this talent level is stupid.
That's what I was just about to say.
This is one of the 4 most talented teams in college football.
And that's what I was just about to say is that Urban Meyer may have built this program into such a powerhouse that
it's just a machine, right? Plug and play.
At this point, it doesn't matter who the coach is. Like,
I mean,
if Nick Saban hired a successor at Alabama, you wouldn't expect there to be much of a drop-off at all.
Not in the first
Alabama,
2 years, right?
Not in the first 2 or 3 years because they've built it into such a ridiculous powerhouse. Ohio State is the same thing in terms of –
I mean, think about it. Like Chase Young, their defensive end, like if you point back at last season, right, they won 13 games. They only lost to Purdue, and they didn't make the college football playoff, right?
Ohio State?
No, they did. They didn't.
No.
And so they lost 1 game to Purdue, and the biggest question marks all last year was their defense. Their defense.
All year.
And it wasn't that the defense was bad. It's just they let up so many big plays.
Huge.
Right? They still finished top 25 in defensive S&P plus. They were still like
that's crazy.
Right? And they bring back Chase Young, who might be the best defensive player in the country.
Which is hilarious because they just lost arguably the best defensive player in the country.
Right, and he could very well be the number 1 pick. Yeah, he didn't even play last year. He could be and they bring back their entire secondary, right? And what has Ohio State done the last 5 years? Look at all the corners and safeties in the NFL who have went to Ohio State the last 5 years.
So I have a question.
Like,
I have a
yeah,
question. Are you just telling me that we did all of this 45 minutes of conversation just to say that Ohio State's just going to win the fucking conference again?
I don't see how they don't, in all honesty. And I know a lot of people have a lot of questions about Ryan Day and the offense. Like, they lose a lot. I'm not going to lie. They bring back 117th out of 130 teams. They are bringing back on offensive production, right? But they bring back so much on defense, and you have to assume the defense gets better. You have to.
Well, and not only that the defense gets better, but you are plugging in one of the greatest high school quarterback recruits of all time to play.
I just don't see how they're not the favorite in the conference.
It's just the only reason that they might not win. Look, this feels like one of those years that Michigan-Ohio State game is going to mean as much as it ever has.
Right.
Because there's a very, very good chance that both of those teams are undefeated.
I don't see any way that two teams meet with either of them having more than 1 to 2 losses. There's no chance.
It would shock me if either of those teams had 2 losses even. Like, both of those teams at the most should have a loss, meaning both of those teams in that spot would theoretically control their own destiny to get to the college football playoff.
It comes down to
that didn't work out that way. I know that didn't work out that way last year. Ohio State had a loss. Whatever.
And they still had an argument to be in the playoff.
They had an argument. That's my point, is you would control your own destiny to have the argument. You got 2 losses. It's a different conversation. So this game, I fully anticipate both teams being undefeated, to be quite honest with you, going into that game. And so at Michigan.
Could this be the year, now that Meyer's finally gone, could Jim Harbaugh finally beat Ohio State?
And if Jim Harbaugh doesn't beat Ohio State this year,
it might be curtains for you, boy.
Dude could go. What's crazy is, dude could go 11-0. Could go 11-0. Go win a Rose Bowl, right? Because they could end up being
back-to-back years.
Right. It could go win a Rose Bowl.
Beat Florida in their annual Florida versus Michigan college football bowl game matchup.
Oh my God, I can't wait. No, they'll get this year. But Michigan, it's like, I don't know what to expect, and that's the key thing. It's like, so what's so funny is what we've boiled this thing down to, and we'll get to the last couple of teams here in a second. But what we've basically just boiled the entire conference down to is this: if you're going to take anything away from the Big Ten, all that matters in the East is the Ohio State-Michigan game. It's all that matters, because both of those teams are likely going to run the table. Like, yes, the other games matter leading up to it, but ultimately the deciding factor is going to be that. In the West, it is a bleep show.
Yeah, it's whoever separates themselves,
it's right? Just literally there are 6 teams out of the 7 that could win that side of the conference. And so that's fun. That's something worth paying attention to. And not that these other teams aren't, right? But when it comes to the potential of who's going to win the conference, if we're looking this strictly in a sense of winning conference championships for the sake of winning conference championships, right? Because everybody likes to look at things through the purview of
banners and trophies.
College football playoff, right? But everybody tries to look at it now as, how do you get to the college football playoff? Who's going to get to the college football playoff? In the Big Ten and any other conference, you should be proud to win your conference.
Only 4 teams get in, dude, and that's been the problem with college football discourse since they introduced the playoff.
Exactly,
right?
And so we need to stop looking at it that way. Yes, obviously, in every conference, your hope is to get there. But in the ACC, we pretty much know that unless a team goes undefeated and then beats Clemson, you're not getting in. And in the Big Ten, there's a very good chance that if you don't go undefeated, you might not get in, because the SEC has been getting a couple of teams recent years.
I mean, there's one Power 5 conference. Like, the Pac-12 is legitimately, in my mind, does not have a single national championship contender. It's a power 4.
There's
7 teams. There's 7 teams competing for national championships right now.
Right.
That's it.
What everyone needs to understand at this point is you either should call it the Power 4 or the Power 6. There's not a Power 5. The Pac-12 is not a 5th power conference.
Pac-12 is the AAC out west.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. So we need to stop looking at everything with just the eyes of who gets to the playoff. And so if you're looking for the most entertaining storylines in the Big Ten, it is Ohio State and Michigan in their game individually, because both of those teams should roll through their schedules. And in the West, it is how much upside do both Nebraska and Minnesota have, how consistent can Iowa be, and what's Northwestern, what's
Wisconsin,
what's Penn State?
Purdue,
Penn State. Sorry, Penn State's on the East, but what are those teams? What are they going to be this year? And so I accidentally said Penn State because I was looking ahead. What is Penn State? Here we are.
Yeah, that's a terrific question. I have no idea. They lost Trace McSorley, who's arguably the best player in program. Well, not player, but most accomplished quarterback in program history, right?
Sure.
And then they lose his backup, who transfers to Mississippi State, right? They start off the year with a very, very easy schedule, so they could get things rolling. And James Franklin is probably one of the 10 best coaches in college football.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I think we can agree on that at this point.
I mean, if they won 9 games again this year, would I be shocked? Not at all.
No, not at all.
But so they're definitely a bowl team, but they're not. There's no way they're winning the Big Ten East this year.
This is the first year.
I'm interested to see what they do at quarterback, but other than that, I'm not really sure what to say about Penn State.
I don't find Penn State that interesting this season.
I like Penn State. I love them with Trace McSorley.
Yeah, they were fun last year.
Right.
They were really fun when it was Saquon and Trace McSorley.
Miles Sanders wasn't bad last year too, and he's gone now. So.
Yeah, look, Penn State, they going into this season, it's the least interested I've been in them in a very long time.
And it's because it's a rebuild, right? It's how ugly does their rebuild get? Is it going to be one of the
right? Well, and the thing is if it was going to get really ugly, I'd be interested.
But I don't think it will.
I don't think it'll get really ugly. I think they'll still be a bowl eligible.
Their defense is still going to be really good.
I think worst case scenario, they're 7 wins. Best case scenario, they're probably 9 wins. I don't think that they're anything more than that. They're going to be this season one of those middle tier teams that loses a couple games you'd be shocked by, that might win a couple games you're shocked by, but overall they're going to be relatively toward the middle. And so it's not really that entertaining of a team this season. I love James Franklin. I think he's a great coach. And that's why I don't think that their rebuild is catastrophically low and building it back up.
And like I said, I wouldn't be surprised. If the defense could carry them at the beginning of the season while the offense finds its footing with all the new pieces they're going to be breaking in, I would not be shocked at all. This was a top 20 defense last year, top 15 if you look at S&P Plus and points per game and all that kind of stuff. So If the defense is carrying, they play Idaho, Buffalo, Pitt, Maryland, Purdue to start the season. They could very well win all of those games. I wouldn't be shocked. And so it's just how quickly does the offense get up to speed, and how unsinkable is the ship that James Franklin's built.
Right. Yeah, I guess that's sort of the big question, but I don't think it's super sinkable.
Right, and that's the thing. Penn State fans, there's a lot of Penn State fans angry last year, and, rightfully so. There was some questionable play calls in big games, especially that Ohio State game with Trace McSorley and the read option on 3rd or 4th and 1, I believe that was. But, why are you questioning James Franklin? Look, he built Vanderbilt into a 10-win program.
Temper expectations this year if you're Penn State, and know that you'll be back.
If they fire James Franklin for whatever reason,
they're screwed.
Whatever team picks him up should be dancing.
Yeah,
dancing.
That's a great coach.
He's a great coach.
Yeah.
All right, let's
speaking of great coaches, State.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Jeff Brom out of Purdue.
He's the only reason people are talking about Purdue, right? Only reason, but he's the reason people are optimistic about Purdue.
Purdue as a football program.
Hey, shout out to Drew Brees, though.
Shout out Drew Brees, Meech's greatest quarterback of all time.
My goat.
Yeah, that's his goat. I love Drew Brees. Could have been a Dolphin. Anyway, the thing with Purdue that's interesting is
Rondale Moore.
Why would there be any sort of hype around this program? Not that they're a bad program. I got nothing wrong with Purdue. I'm not a Purdue hater. Shout out Indiana.
It'd be weird if you were, right?
It'd be really weird to be a Purdue hater.
Yeah, if you were at a bar watching a game and some guy's just what team Purdue. I really hate? I hate Purdue. You'd be like, what's wrong with this guy?
Why? Yeah, why would you hate Purdue? I will shout out my buddy Daniel, who does he's the announcer for Purdue volleyball.
Shout out to Daniel.
Yeah, shout out Daniel. But anyway, the thing that I will say about Purdue that's interesting is would you be totally shocked? they are the biggest range of things that could happen to a team. In the
They're
Big
another.
Ten.
It's like, who knows, dude? You could tell if you right now, if somebody from the future came and told me they won 10 games and won the Big Ten West, I'd be like, sure. I mean, I guess.
And if someone came back and told me they won 4, I'd be like,
only won 3 games, I'd be like, okay. I mean, why are you coming back to tell me that? But also, like, cool. Like, I guess I could see it.
Yeah, why are you wasting your time travel on telling me Purdue only won 3 games? But okay,
tell me the lottery numbers.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I guess the thing with Purdue is like their out of conference schedule is kind of weird.
Yeah,
like,
it is. Big time.
To start the year at Nevada.
Why?
Nevada. First of all, why would you do this to yourself? Second of all, it's weird. It's just a weird team to choose to play. And then Vanderbilt and TCU.
Those are both not awesome teams, but they're both good teams.
They're both fine.
Our conferences.
They could both beat you. Like,
yeah,
Purdue,
exactly.
If Purdue could start 3-0, Purdue could start 0-3. Like, yeah. I that's why I'm saying there's so much volatility, because it's not just in conference that I'm concerned about them, and I don't know what the results are going to be, but out of conference, those 3 teams like are all teams that could beat you on any given day.
Yep, and I'll just say this: Rondale Moore, probably one of the top 5 most exciting players in college football at wide receiver. Like he's a legit freak too. Like he's only like 5'10". I think he squats like 450 pounds. He's an animal, right? And so you have that guy. You have somebody you can center your whole offense around. And Jeff Brum is a guy who can manufacture offense. I don't think that's
totally fair.
And so their offense is not bringing back a lot. One of the lowest teams in terms of returning offensive production in the country.
Mm-hmm.
But they returned their head coach, and there was a lot of talk that they wouldn't, right?
Yeah.
And so for what that's worth, they bring back both starting offensive tackles. The offense could, like, there's a lot to work there for whoever gets the quarterback job, right? Because they did lose David Blau, but he was all right. He had the best quarterbacking season any non-Drew Brees quarterback has ever had. But
all right, fair.
But you can replace him. Like, he seems very replaceable, right?
Yeah.
And the defense should improve. They bring back a lot of talent, or at least production, maybe not high-level talent.
Exactly.
But there's enough there that I like. So it's like we said, if they won 10 games, I wouldn't be shocked. If they somehow came out and only won 5 games, I wouldn't be shocked. But I expect them fully to be bowl eligible, and I would expect 8 wins. Maybe.
If I had to, you took the words out of my mouth. If I had to predict what they were going to do this year, it's 8 wins.
I mean, because at some point, Brom has to answer to all the promise that people have been putting into him. Like, exactly. Show us, get 8 wins, right?
Yeah, and I think now would be the time to do it because there's so much question on that side of the conference.
And then take the Auburn job when it inevitably becomes available next year.
I mean, if you look at the standings from last year in the Big Ten West, it went Northwestern, Wisconsin, Purdue, Iowa, Nebraska, Minnesota. You could literally – and then Illinois. Illinois I'm keeping in the 7th spot. But if you flipped that upside down,
it would still make sense.
It would be surprising, but it would still make sense. Like, I just said Northwestern probably should win the Big Ten West, but if they came in 6th in the Big Ten West, I'd be like, all right, yeah, those other teams overachieved.
All right, this is a team we don't have to worry about overachieving.
Can we just do the UConn thing to Rutgers and just go and get them out of the way?
Yeah, if they lose that opening game against who do they play week 1? Remind me who they play week 1.
They play UMass.
If they lose to UMass week 1, they're going winless. I'm sorry. Liberty's going to beat them as well.
Put your money on it now, folks. Liberty will beat Rutgers.
I want to say one thing about Rutgers, and then we can move on. Please, for the love of God, someone rescue Raheem Blackshear. I've never seen this before. How does somebody win your team? How does somebody lead your team in rushing and receiving in the Power 5 conference?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Hold on. I have to read their starting quarterback stat line from last year.
Do it.
Artur Satowski was granted he was a true freshman playing on a team. This is nothing against Artur Satowski the person.
There's so much against Artur Satowski the person. You're attacking his morals and his character, but please continue.
As a true freshman last year, 49 he started 11 games. 11. 49% completion percentage. 1,158 yards. 4 touchdowns,
Stop.
and 18 interceptions.
Why are you doing this?
On an offense that scored 14 points per game, which was last in the country.
Oh my God.
Good luck, Rutgers. That's all I'm saying. I'm hoping the checks are worth it because goodness gracious, you got like
that's a nightmare.
I don't know how you rebuild the program either. That's a conversation for another show, but I don't know how you even get that program back to bowl eligibility because that seems so far out of reach.
They're horrific. It really would take a really
They might need to go the Yukon route and step back into the Big East.
Well, the thing that I would say about the Rutgers side of it, if we do want to get into that just ever so briefly, would be you make a weird splashy head coach decision. So you hire.
You go get Lou Holtz.
Sure. Well, no. I'm not saying like the old school. I'm saying you hire some like 30-year-old. You know what I mean? Like you hire some up and
like the Sean McVay of college football type situation.
Totally. Well, my guy, and I don't remember where he's gone to now. Is he with USC? Graham Harrell?
Graham Harrell, yeah.
Yeah, Graham Harrell
is at North Texas, and now he's at USC.
Right. So he was in North Texas, and I wanted every single program in the country to hire him as their next head coach.
Well, he landed at USC, so I'm sure you're happy. You're an honorary USC fan, I believe.
Yeah. What everybody doesn't know is that strictly just because of my really obnoxious need to get the Sam Darnold-led USC Trojans into the college football playoff, which was a travesty that they weren't in it when they were 9-3. I became an honorary USC fan. So now that Graham Harrell is there, I'm all in. Go Trojans, fight on. But
big time Trojans podcast.
Big time Trojans. But nonetheless, I would say like someone like that, right? Young,
you just got to do something
offensive minded
option for Christ.
Just go score a bunch of points. Just do whatever, man. But anyway, we spent too much time on Rutgers. Lastly, we end with the most boring team in the history of college football, Wisconsin.
Every goddamn year. So boring.
I hate them.
I don't hate them. I wouldn't say it that strongly, but
I can't stand. You know what? I am the guy at the bar that when you said it'd be really weird if that guy didn't like Purdue, I'm that guy about Wisconsin because, God, man, you're the same team every year. You underachieve every year.
It's weird, too, is they're like a less exciting Iowa because they don't even get the upsets that Iowa gets.
Exactly. Because they're favored. They don't get the upsets because they're favored. And then when they're not favored, they lose.
So here's what I'll say about Wisconsin. For some reason, they have, 5 straight home games right in the middle of the season?
Right at the start of the year. No. Oh, no. Yeah, no, that's right at the start of the year, no?
Right, from Central Michigan down to Michigan State. They get all of those games at home.
Right, they'll be 6.
They have legitimately probably one of the best home field advantages in the country. Those kids are crazy at Wisconsin. Like they're legitimate psychopaths.
Yeah. I know people who went there. They're also crazy people.
But the schedule is kind of difficult, right? You get Michigan, Ohio State, Michigan State, Nebraska, Minnesota. Like they have one of the tougher Big Ten, but they'll win 9 games, right?
Listen to me. They're going to. I don't want to say they're going to lose to Michigan, but they're going to lose to Michigan.
I don't want to say they're losing to Michigan, but they're losing to Michigan.
I don't want to say it, but they're going to lose to Michigan. They're going to lose at Ohio State. They could very well lose to Iowa. If they lose to Iowa and Ohio State, they will lose at Nebraska. And at Minnesota is not an easy game to end the year. Like, this is a very difficult schedule.
They'll win 7 to 9 games, bro. Just take it to the bank.
7 to 9 games. Wisconsin's boring. They're going to run the ball a ton, and we're going.
Jonathan Taylor will probably rush for 3,000 yards.
Right, and he'll be dynamic. And we'll be like, oh my God, look how great he is. Meanwhile, their offensive linemen, they're all 6'8".
Can I say something too?
Open up these holes.
Can I say something too? They lost 3 all first team offensive linemen.
And they're still going to replace them.
And they're going to run for like 4,000 yards. So
you know what's going to bother me? And I think Jonathan Taylor is a superstar running back. Like, I think the kid's a superstar. But you know how much it bothers me when Wisconsin running backs are in the Heisman Trophy conversation?
Oh, yeah, it's trash.
It's just compiling stats.
Monty Ball, Melvin Gordon.
No, and Melvin Gordon turned into a stud, right? It's not to say that they're not studs.
I thought Monty Ball was going to be so sweet in the NFL.
Everybody did because he was running through gigantic holes.
You put me – hold on. Let's end it on this, right? If they gave you 13 games as the Wisconsin starting running back, assuming you didn't break every bone in your body after week 3. Yeah.
How many yards could I run for?
behind the Wisconsin offensive line in 13 games, assuming you don't break every bone in your goddamn body.
Right. So I'll get 0 yards after contact, but I'll probably still average about 6 yards a carry. So I'm running for over 1,000 yards.
Yeah. Paul Chris is just feeding Jeremy Taché the ball. What is he doing?
That's what I'm saying. No, man. If I was indestructible, like to the point where, like, if we're really doing this, right? If we're really doing this in the game where it's like I don't get hurt, right? Not getting hurt. I just have to be able to stand up and like run forward. That offensive line is so dominant that I'm averaging 6 yards a carry. I'm running for over 1,000 yards. I'm telling you.
You got to hope that the quarterback is somewhat passable this year. Like if Jack Cohen is decent and they can keep 9 guys out of the box, you might get to 1,000 yards. I could see it.
I'm getting to 1,000 yards.
What's the thing if you just average 3.4 yards a carry on all 4 downs, it's a first down?
Yeah, man.
No, yeah. So, I mean, that's all you got to do, dude. Just move the chain.
I'm an automatic first down.
Jeremy Taché, your next Wisconsin running back. I think that'll do it for this week's episode.
That's it. We'll talk to you guys next week.
All right. See you guys next week.